Tomorrow morning's flying weather graphics showing a lot of IFR in the Bering Sea here, right up to the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta coast, down to about Cape Newenham and then northward through the Bering Strait, possibly catching Point Hope and Cape Lisburne, but big improvement up here to the north from what we've seen for the last week with VFR from the Brooks Range all the way out to the Arctic Ocean. Good VFR right on down into Cook Inlet, Kodiak Island. And still some moisture here, keeping conditions lower for the North Gulf Coast into the southeastern Copper River Basin. So marginal VFR even up into the eastern Alaska Range over in here. IFR for the northern Panhandle, better conditions down south. For the afternoon, IFR gone here with a lot of VFR on the inside waters, marginal VFR along the outer coastline up to Yakutat, and still into the eastern Copper River Basin, mostly south of the Alaska Range. VFR here in the interior, again from the Arctic coast, right on down to Kodiak Island, Prince William Sound, into Bristol Bay. IFR holds out over just about all the Bering Sea and the Aleutians. And that doesn't change much into Wednesday, just solid IFR for the Aleutian chain, right on up into the Bering Strait, into the Chukchi Sea there, spreading into the DeLong Mountains here, and maybe some marginal VFR for Kotzebue, and the southern Seward Peninsula could see some IFR there, Nome, White Mountain, those areas, and along the Yukon Delta coastline. Otherwise, good VFR in the interior. And marginal VFR, looks like it'll stay mostly along or off the southeast coast there. And for the time for Wednesday afternoon, nothing but VFR for interior Alaska until you get out here to the coastal areas of the Yukon and possibly Kuskokwim Deltas. And Nunivak Island, actually, you could see some IFR, still a lot of IFR for the Bering Sea into the Aleutians, and to a lesser extent now along the northwest coast. Otherwise, the southeast coast, VFR. Moving on to passes. VFR for Anatuvik and Adigan for probably tomorrow and a few days. And for the Western Alaska Range, looking good as well. Lake Clark and Merrill, VFR. Rainy VFR, windy VFR. Isabel VFR. Mentasta, though, with some moisture lingering over that way, probably marginal through the day at times. Look for some improvement maybe in the afternoon, maybe not, but that's where the lowest conditions will be, the Eastern Alaska Range there through that pass. And Tonito, though, VFR. And Portage, lowest conditions early on, better in the afternoon toward evening. Chilkoot and White, marginal VFR becoming VFR. And for the freezing levels, 2,000 feet here over the northern southeast coast there. Otherwise, about 4,000 feet here over much of the interior, 4,000 to 6,000 feet or so out into the Bering Sea. And from there, taking a look at icing with all the moisture coming up into the, actually from southwest to northeast here, slowly moving eastward. Pretty good zone of considerable rime icing here from northern Seward Peninsula right on up Kivalina, Point Hope, Cape Lisburne to Point Lay. And this area here spreading up to maybe clipping western St. Lawrence Island, but extending down across the Pribilofs and toward the Alaska Peninsula. And still some possible mixed icing of the light variety here over the southeast interior, diminishing throughout the day. And for the jet stream, low pressure that's over us today, right over northern Cook Inlet here, sliding southeastward into the Gulf of Alaska, bringing drier northeast flow behind it with higher pressure out here along the coast. And winds not too strong, 70 knots out of the west across the Queen Charlotte's here. And westerlies at about 65 knots, turn south at 65 here over the Bering Sea and the Aleutians. 9,000 feet, this system slowly coming eastward and east-northeastward, 50-knot winds in advance of the front there. Westerlies 45 knots over the western Aleutians. Southwesterlies at 40 knots into the northwest coast there. And light winds under high pressure in the interior. Maybe some 30-knot northerlies here coming down around the backside of this low as it slides east-southeastward into the Gulf. And at 3,000 feet, light winds in the interior, the Gulf of Alaska, the Panhandle, out here to the west, that's where the winds are. Westerlies 40 knots across the southern Bering Sea, take a turn to the north here at 50 knots in advance of that front, in towards St. Matthew Island with 40 to 45 knot winds there blowing across the western Seward Peninsula. The strongest winds up along the western Arctic coast. Turbulence-wise, with that, throwing some considerable moderate turbulence here for the west side of the Arctic coast, say maybe Wainwright down to Point Hope, also for the Bering Strait, and out here in the central Bering Sea around St. Matthew Island. Otherwise, not too bad elsewhere.